Welcome to another special episode of the Growth Compass. Shout out to the sponsor senders. If you want to do cold email deliverability correctly, hit the link in the description. And if it wasn't for them, I would not be able to spend very good quality time with people that I really admire, like Abu. What's up?
It's very kind of you to say. Not much more, just grinding.
That's right. I know very well, and I don't know. Well, I guess it depends who's tuned into the episode. You know, for whoever doesn't know, Abu and I go way, way back. Luckily, I think a lot of the things that we'll touch on today, I've been able to watch him do, and it's been really amazing. So I'm excited for other people to learn about it. So, Abu, if you want to, now you can give a brief introduction of who you are and what you're building.
Sure. So, hello everyone. What's going on, Blake? Good to see you. I am Abu, and I am the owner of Green Zone Solutions. It's a tech consultancy that's been active for about a year and a half. I run it with my older brother. We're very like-minded, and so we thought that we'd sort of put our technical and problem-solving skills and mindsets together to help different kinds of businesses, different kinds of entities solve operational issues with tech. So yeah, that's Green Zone Solutions. We offer 3 lines of service: web design, workflow automation, and data analytics.
That's
It's
right.
been quite the journey.
Well, so have you? Is this the first time that you've uh, owned a company, started your own thing, um, or have you been in entrepreneurship in the space before that?
Yeah, so it's definitely not my first go around. I have been in the entrepreneurship and startup space really for I want to say like 6 to 7 years now. I started learning entrepreneurship back in college at the University of Delaware. Go Blue Hens! I um, yeah, back in 2019, really, it was when I officially kind of joined an entrepreneurship club, learned about entrepreneurship, and then got accepted into the University of Delaware's like craziest entrepreneurship program. It's this crazy like summer startup boot camp for the full 12 weeks. It's like a full-time job. It's very intense, but they pay you for it, right? You get over 10K in kind of funding for your startup, funding for different materials that you need and whatnot. So that was kind of like the start of my journey. Out of that actually came a startup called Potluck. At the time, I had a co-founder, and we were an ethnic grocery delivery service for international students. Right? If you could imagine, yourself in, let's say, like a Far East Asian country, right, studying abroad, it might be hard to find like your bagel with cream cheese, your cinnamon toast crunch, your hot dog hamburger, you know, all these common things that you could just run to the store and grab right now. Actually, that's if you were in that setting, it would be very hard to get those things, and that's exactly what international students face here. So we wanted to close that accessibility gap with the grocery delivery service. So um, that was kind of the startup. My responsibilities kind of focused on the operations and tech side. So yeah, that was sort of my first go around.
Well, what? So, how long did you end up doing that for?
Yeah. So we started at the end of the summer of 2019, so like August 2019, and we were running it for 2 years. It was the first time that I had done anything business related. It was the first time I started a company, first of many things. But yeah, so it lasted about 2 years.
And throughout the 2 years, well, I guess to frame some of these questions, what did it look like? Like, how are you defining the end of it? Like, what did that mean to you? You guys, like, was there a day where you're like, we're done? Or was it more like kind of, you guys eased your way out of it and then other priorities took place?
Yeah, I think it was more of the latter. I think so. When we were getting started, we understood our problem, we understood who we were, our kind of overview, the services we were providing. We were essentially a DoorDash for international students, and then grew into the general international community in Newark, Delaware, and Newcastle County. And so yeah, we focused on the problem, started solving it, and then worried about like business model and economics, where I think we maybe should have acknowledged that a little bit earlier. But we were running with it. We actually had a lot more demand than we could handle. Right? We grew our team from 2 to 4. And so we were doing the deliveries ourselves, and we'd go and partner up with ethnic grocers that were like, heck yeah, like you're going to bring me more business for sure. Like, what can we do to help? But and so we were working with these ethnic grocers. We'd take orders from people, fulfill the orders, pay for them up front, and then receive payment plus a delivery fee from
Really?
our yeah, yeah.
And you were doing the delivery yourself?
Yes, yeah, yeah. Our team was doing it ourselves. Yeah, we're handling all those groceries, and we had so much demand but such little, like, I guess, supply, right, in terms of our operations, that we had to. That's kind of what caused us to abort mission towards the end, because we needed a lot more resources. And
Wow.
what's crazy is that, like, we had raised $30,000, right, and that can do a lot of good, right, for any startup situation, any company. But we found that, and especially in hindsight and looking back, and like after what I've learned in these past like 5-ish years, we needed at least double that to actually scale our operations and try to become profitable. So,
Well,
yeah.
so by supply, do you mean that there weren't enough ethnic grocery stores?
No. So in terms of the actual groceries, our partners had enough, basically, right, to supply their customers and to essentially supply us as a new customer. So the physical goods weren't the issue. It was like the supply of our services. We could only handle so many orders within one period of time due to like many reasons. So for example, what we tried to do was, when folks would order, we would sort of take multiple orders, go to the store and try to grab more than one order at a time. But because we're dealing with groceries take up a lot of space in vehicles. And so you could only deliver so many at one time,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
right? So that was a huge bottleneck. Another one was that because we were paying for these groceries up front, and we didn't have super sophisticated systems that would allow like customers to like pay for their groceries up front, just because of a lot of like price variation and not knowing if the store actually has an item, right? There were just so many operational, just sort of, I guess, hurdles to overcome, to where like we needed more resources to actually like to level up and become something closer to like an Instacart or a DoorDash that's a little bit more of a seamless experience. So yeah, like handling a bunch of groceries at one time, we had to pay for groceries up front. So if we're spending like
Yeah.
a couple thousand in the store, and then the customer pays us, it takes like almost a week for those funds to cycle back into our account. So long story short, what was happening was we had a few thousand in our bank account, but because we'd pay for these groceries up front, and then we had to wait like a whole week, we we could run out of money for certain orders and not be able to pay for them up front, and therefore not be able to like actually fulfill an order. So we had to actually close off. We got so much demand that
Wow.
we had to set off our delivery services to one day a week, so that those funds could cycle back into our account, and then we could handle
Well, so if you so okay, so then it seems like this is a marketplace, and it seems like there are enough people asking for the groceries and enough people supplying the groceries. And what you're saying is, by resources, you just mean like people physically fulfilling the orders, like vehicles to transport them and deliver them.
Yeah, yes. So we could have done it that way, which I think is the Instacart way. I think there are issues with that way, right? I think that's why Instacart has faced multiple strikes from their delivery drivers, right? Because the economics around it all is like, or let me rephrase. It's a model that's like not super, I guess, profitable, especially for the drivers, right? Because the drivers have to go in and shop and like package everything, which is why we try to partner with ethnic grocers. And then delivering it as well has its own sort of hurdle. So really, after the fact, and I didn't realize this during the time. Neither one of us did. We were so young, very early stage, kind of entrepreneurs learning on the fly. And so in hindsight, I think what would have made sense in terms of a business model and in terms of still like satisfying the customer is actually purchasing and this is oddly specific, but it's going to make sense, purchasing a reefer van which is, if you could think of just, a regular van, a delivery van with refrigeration attached to it, right? That will do multiple things. One, it would allow us to sort of deliver more efficiently, right? We'd be able to rack up probably up to 40 different orders, and then like sort of deliver on one route multiple orders, and then that would save us money as a company to where we could pay one driver for a full day's worth of work and then still walk away profitable. Whereas if you source sort of multiple drivers for like sort of these one-off orders, you have a more Instacart situation, right? Which isn't bad necessarily, but the operations around like an Instacart situation are different from a DoorDash situation. It's a lot more tough when handling groceries, and like if something is out of stock or if something is missing, paying the drivers, profiting from the orders and whatnot. So yeah, there were a lot of unexpected like technical things that popped up in those operations.
So if you had the resources, would you do it again? Like, do you feel like it's viable enough of a business model?
Yeah, great question. I definitely think so. I think with the right amount of resources, which in my mind sort of means money to kind of buy the things that you need to operate, especially with that reefer van, I think yes, it definitely is viable because the demand is there. I think as long as there's a demand, and then on the other side, these ethnic grocers, obviously they're trying to make as many sales as they can.
Everybody hear that? There's a viable
Yeah,
business model. Abu's already tested. If you got the resources, just go out and do it.
yeah, just do it. Well, actually, as a matter of fact, one of our competitors, we is, or I shouldn't say our, I should say one of our old competitors,
Yeah.
which is we, and they were focused more on, I think, delivering East Asian groceries and ingredients, and I think they might have some South Asian as well. And who knows? Perhaps they've expanded. That's sort of how they were operating. So we found out after the fact, after coming up with the reefer van concept and just looking in hindsight of how we could operate better, it was kind of funny. We saw validation through the competitor because we did some research and then found that that's exactly how they were operating, because that's what makes the most sense. But yeah, 100%. Like it definitely is a viable business model. It is a lot, right? Any sort of high inventory count situation business, even like with convenience stores, because I have some experience in that space, I'm sure, as you know, with Lula. I think it's definitely like a tough space just operationally.
So, related to your experience at Potluck, so it sounds like UDEL facilitated the environment for you to dive into something and learn like IRL about entrepreneurship. Is that true?
Yeah, 100%. Specifically horn entrepreneurship, and shout out to Vince DeFelice, my favorite and best professor ever.
Shout out
He's
Vince.
it's so funny. He doesn't have to be there, but he cares about truly like helping us and educating us, and you know not just following the traditional vocational path of like, oh, okay, like grow up, go to school, get a job, die, right? It's a lot more than that, right? Like lots of people find out what they want to do like way later on in life, and maybe even have some regrets. But Vince sort of teaches us those life lessons early on through entrepreneurship so that we could sort of pave our own path. And so, yeah, shout out to Vince. But yeah, so to answer your question, absolutely. I think Horn Entrepreneurship, Summer Founders, and Vince and the associated members like truly helped us practice entrepreneurship IRL, which is super important, right? Because lots of folks have ideas and they try to build something, they find out it doesn't work, but you got to work with people from the very beginning, understand their pain points, problems, and then go from there.
All right. Well, I have a question for you. All right, you ready? So my senior year of college, I did an independent study project that looked at, and I was at a small liberal arts college, and we had done the whole entrepreneurship club thing, and I was interested in entrepreneurship and stuff. I mean, whatever my understanding of entrepreneurship was, like senior year of college, which relates to this question. But there was a professor there that was very interested in the of entrepreneurship, and also specifically because Union, where I was going, didn't have. They used to have an entrepreneurship program, but had discontinued it, and there were all these things about like people trying to, you know, because it's a huge engineering school, so there's a lot of really interesting technology. There's a lot of opportunity for startups, stuff like that, but there's not the ecosystem to support it. And so I did a report about other liberal arts colleges and like ranked their entrepreneurial programs and looked into it. But while doing that research, I found that at least at the time when I was graduating, there was an increase, or I think it was this. There were the most ever entrepreneurial, like major plus, like major or minor or both, being offered um, at a college level than ever. Like it was at the highest level ever, and the rate of entrepreneurship post university was one of the lowest. And so, you would think if people are going and studying entrepreneurship, then they would leave school and be an entrepreneur. But I think like both of us uh, could talk about, like, there's so much about entrepreneurship you have to learn by doing it. And so, with your experience being someone that is an entrepreneur now, actually did do it and also studied it, how much of a legitimate education about entrepreneurship came from your educational experience at UDEL versus what you experienced, while actually doing it?
Yeah, great question. Great question. I think 99% of it. The reason why I say that is because, and it's funny because I'm continuing to learn, because everything that was taught to me in that more, I guess, formal setting were principles, essentially, right? There was a lot of information, there was a lot of guidance, and we had a sandbox to sort of play in, right? Meaning we went out, did interviews, created MVPs, put things out there to see, to like get feedback and whatnot. I say 99% because those principles carry on. And I have tried things differently just out of curiosity. I'm like, okay, like, okay. So I was taught to start with a problem, interview a bunch of people, and then maybe like start to build something, get some free feedback and build incremental. But after that, I was like, okay, I know how to put this thing together. I kind of have a little bit of an idea. I know somebody else mentioned this pain point before. Let me try to like put something together, spend some time building first and see what happens. I think 9 out of 10 times you always find that, like, in hindsight, you kind of wasted your time building, right? It's really about sort of pretty much like selling first, right? Because if you're effectively solving something for somebody or delivering on a desire, or whatever need, then the best form of validation is people taking risk, right? Meaning they open up their wallet and they kind of bet on your service, not knowing what the full scope of like that experience will be. And so that's how you can really tell. And so I but going back to your question, I think most of it, almost all of it, came from that formal education from Horn. And I guess what I will say is that post college, I think my experiences just sort of validated everything that I learned. And I also wanted to make a comment on that like difference in data around like entrepreneurship sort of being the most popular it has been in colleges, and then sort of the inverse happening post college. I honestly feel like entrepreneurship in college was a lot easier. And the reason why I say that, it's not so black and white, right? Like there's some easy things, but there are also some hard things. The same thing like post college. I think the biggest reason was the fact that you were a student, right? When you're a student, for one, you're a lot more confident, I think, because you feel like there's not much to lose and you have an excuse to go out and be like, hey, like, I'm working on this thing. Like, I'm a college student. Trying to develop this thing. Can I have some of your time? Whereas, like, after college, when you're more visibly like a grown adult, I feel like people, like, when you try to reach out to folks and try to chat with them, they're a little bit more like off put by like you reaching out, and it's kind of like, oh, like, oh, do you face this issue? I know that you work this
Yeah,
kind of role. Do you face this specific issue? And they're like, oh, maybe, yeah. Why are you asking me this? Like,
yeah,
what are you
yeah.
trying to do? A sale or something? Whereas like when you're a student, you could be like, hey, I'm working on this thing. I'm a student at the University of Delaware, and people are immediately a lot more energized to help you. So that's kind of what I mean by like a bit easier. versus in that more college setting versus post college.
So, I mean, if you can, it sounds like they did a great job. So that's really good to hear. I'm glad to hear that. But if you could, what are those principles that you say live on? You know, you said find a problem, interview people, but like, how would you frame what those principles are that you carry with you?
Yeah, yeah, great question. I think there are like sort of there are so many, right? Like so many different ones. Know your market, all these different things. But I think the top three that are sort of live at the nucleus, right? The core of everything is focus on the problem, right? As much as you can, almost at all times, really at all times. Focus on focus on your customer as well, right? That's super important. Know your customer, understand them. You'd be surprised how such a tiny fact can go so far for you as somebody who's solving a problem for somebody. And I'll give an example in a second. And then finally, and this is the phrasing has changed a little bit over time, but the message is still the same. I think initially it was focus on a business model, right? And try to validate a business model through a sales order. Now I kind of phrase that as sell first. I'm inspired by Sam, who obviously is our wonderful friend and colleague, who also went through the same program. It's about selling first, right? Because that's how you're able to actually validate before building anything. And sometimes it's hard because it's like, okay, how can you sell first without having anything? But there are a lot of different ways to actually do that. So I guess to give the example about like really focusing on the customer, right? When we were working on Potluck, the ethnic grocery delivery service, we were working with a couple international students who were like early evangelists, loved the idea, and sort of wanted to help us promote it and whatnot. But we had an issue around like reaching more folks and having a nice, easy means of communicating with people. And we didn't even realize that it was that much of a struggle until we spent some time trying to work with people. But what I had found, and I realized that I hadn't done enough of the process of knowing my customer. I was sitting in my chair and I was thinking, like the one app. So my mom is from Sierra Leone, which is in West Africa, and so we have family overseas, and she's always chatting with them, and she's not tech savvy at all. She's actually probably like the bottom, like 10% of like uh, you know older folks that
Okay.
don't understand tech. So, but the one app that she knows much better than I do is WhatsApp, and that's because you need WhatsApp in today's world and a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
circumstances to actually reach people overseas. Um, and so I was thinking, like, okay, we're serving international students. How do they communicate with their families overseas? It was WhatsApp, right? And so we created a WhatsApp specifically for Potluck and a phone number, and that's where we ran all of our channels, sales channels, marketing channels, communication channels, like literally everything was based on that. And because of that, it made it easy, not just for international students to reach out to us, but after we would like post on Facebook and some folks would, hear about us and tell other folks. We had these older folk that in the community, the general like Newcastle County community, reaching out, messaging us, say, "Hey, do you do delivery from Parivar?" Right, which was one of the ethnic grocers that we partnered with, and we'd be like, "Yeah, sure." Like, are you looking to place an order? And it was like a seamless experience for them because they had that experience, right? And so that's what I mean by know your customer. Had we had known that from the beginning, and we knew that, like, okay, our international communities typically have experience with these more international apps like WhatsApp, we would have put that in place even earlier, right? But that's why it's important to know your customer, in my opinion.
So then I think the two main ones that you laid out was you said focus on the problem at all times and know your customer.
Yes.
Is I
Yeah.
mean I mean is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah. Those were the first two I laid out. And then the third, which I think is also just as important for validating a business model, is to sell first.
Ah, right. Thank you. Yeah. All right. So those three things. Look at that. We got a framework. That's nice. Man, you should go over and teach at Horn. Or wait, you are.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, yeah, that's a good point. It's a nice segue. So yeah, I actually this past week I just advised these brilliant students this year. They have some of them have some crazy, very interesting ideas. There's just one kid who is taking up a master's program currently at UD, but has set up this kind of water purification system in Africa, and he's supplying nice, clean water to 13,000 people in this specific community, and he's trying to expand to other communities. So it's not just like, it's way past this just idea stage. It's like, okay, I'm actively solving the problem for folks, and so I was like, I'm advising you. I'm like honored to know you. Like I'm like sitting here like a like just because sort of passenger princess looking like listening and taking in like what he was everything that he was
That's
saying,
hilarious.
and I was like, oh my gosh, you're brilliant, like anything I could do to help, like please let me know. So yeah, I have advised quite a few horn students. It's really just a form of giving back, and I never thought that I would enjoy teaching, but it definitely is like a super fulfilling experience in general.
Well, so I have a question based on this, but so again, because it just escaped my mind as you were talking about that student. So focus on the problem, know your customer, and there's a third one.
Sell first.
Thank you. All right. So I think there's a lot um, that we will cover in the next episode about your other experiences, especially advising, because I think that's a really interesting life experience to have. But with green zones at the moment, so if we have these three principles, and how long have you been working on green zones? Would you say?
So since December of 2023, so about a year and a half.
Okay, so in that year and a half, do you feel like you've employed these three principles: focus on the problem, know your customer, sell first? Have you? And if you haven't, how could you?
Yeah, yeah, great question. I think I've more recently sort of dumbed it down to like those three major principles. I think in the beginning with Green Zone, I was like, okay, I know I can be valuable to people, and I know I'm passionate about delivering, these technical solutions to these different situations, right? The variety was also very attractive for me because I could get bored really quickly. And so I casted a wide net and said, okay, like let me see like what people need in terms of like workflow automation and data analytics. So went out, did some of that, learned from a lot of people, got some advisors, got a few clients. And I think in like more recently reflecting on that experience and reflecting on previous experiences, it has come to this point of these like more clear cut like principles that like I carry and that I've gathered from my experiences that are very similar to the principles that I've learned from Horn, for example, but I've been more actively practicing them recently.
So what does that look like then for you? So how did you arrive at, has Greenstone from the beginning been those three services? If it hasn't, how have you decided to arrive at that value proposition over time?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So in the beginning, I should have just sold myself as this individual that had this large pool of experience with various platforms like Zapier, OpenAI, and not just ChatGPT, but lots of their other backend products, Product Board, Notion, Asana, pretty much any very common low to no code tool that you could think of, right? Airtable. And combining those can go so far for people, right? In terms of just automating processes. And so I started there. I said, hey, I know how to automate things and make lives easier. But let me see who needs their life made easier, right? Through tech. So just sort of trying to automate operations. So I, reached out to, I sort of advertised my services primarily like to my network. I got like my initial client had that experience, which was very, very interesting. And then I got an advisor who sort of was on my team, and I also like it was a such a mutually beneficial relationship, and it still is, to where like she was able to provide me like a sort of a consulting template, which I think was super important for me, just knowing how to deal with clients, set expectations, and create a timeline of things. And then I got some subcontracting work from her as well, so that gave me more money and more experience. And then had a few more clients, and then fast forward, I'm thinking like, okay, let me reflect a little bit, right? I haven't had as many clients as I wanted to. I had about 8 in like the first year, and I'm trying to think like, okay, how could I make this a lot more sustainable and a lot more just kind of consistent in terms of work? How can I get to the point where I'm doing the things that I really want to do, right? And try to either automate or get somebody else to help me with the things that I'm spending a lot of time on and that really like I don't want to do. And so that's kind of what had me reflect a little bit even more and come up with these 3 principles of knowing the problem, knowing the customer, and selling first. I think when you focus on those 3 things, everything becomes a lot more clear, right? It was time for me to like start narrowing down. And so I went from that wide net to establishing the 3 services based on the services I was offering previously and what I had seen, right, in that past like year. At that point, we sat down with the city of Philadelphia and consulted with them, even talked about how we might address like an affordable housing initiative, had some really cool intro calls and whatnot. And so again, started to narrow down a little bit. It's still honestly like kind of broad in my opinion. I think we're in this phase of like doing research, but still carrying those same principles of actually selling first, right? So that's what we're doing. We're honing in on a few customer segments specifically in the web design lane, right? So that's us narrowing down that line of service and outlining some customer segments there. And so really like I've kind of turned into the salesman, right? The salesperson and sort of researcher, which is very weird for me because I come from a more technical background and now I'm like speaking a different language. But that allows me to do research, right, and understand my customer, understand their pain points, and then sell first, right? Because then that could turn into something repeatable. Then you work on the operations to make it scalable.
Yeah, well, my final 2 questions for you. I mean, this one has to do with the next one I would ask about Green Zone anyway. But so I'm curious where you're at right now. What is the biggest hurdle for you at the moment, and how is does it also present an opportunity for you?
Great question. Yeah, I think honestly the biggest hurdle, which I wouldn't even say it's that giant of a hurdle, maybe it's just because I have transitioned like this my mindset a little bit to more of a trying to understand the specific client segments and trying to sell to them. But it has been like about bringing in consistent sales, right? So so that has definitely been the biggest hurdle for me, because again, it's a huge adjustment, and then that also dictates how what everything else might look like in terms of the business, in terms of the offerings, in terms of the operations, right? Because you have to start from specific problems, you have to start from customers, and that will then dictate kind of what you do and how you operate, right? Because different folks have different needs.
So the biggest hurdle for you right now is to bring in a few consistent clients.
Yes.
How does that? What is the opportunity for that in you? I mean, do you enjoy the challenge of being like salesman Abu?
Yeah, absolutely. I it brings me back to college
I
because
think
like
he's a great salesman Abu.
hey, I tried. No, I learned from meeting you. So yeah, like I was saying, it brings me back to college. I think the best way to move is understanding the pain points from folks, right? That's how you can essentially like start to make sales. And right, I keep saying sales, sales, sales. I find more fulfillment in actually like solving somebody's problem. But realistically, if you're going to stand up a business, it has to make money because time is the most valuable thing. If you're spending a lot of time in an area, like you're going to have expenses as a human being, so you ought to be compensated for that. And so the opportunity for me really is to one, like know how to sell myself, right? And sell services that I know are impactful in many different situations. And if they're not for a situation, then I don't want to be selling there anyway, right? So it's about learning to sell, knowing what situations your services and sort of matter and sort of where you can be most valuable. And then finally, the final opportunity there is to sort of focus on a niche and become the guy for that niche within a specific area or region. So, so yeah, there's definitely, though like sales has been a hurdle and like adjusting myself to this more sales mindset sort of individual, it yields, I think, a ton of opportunity for the future.
It's firing me up, man. I love it when you talk about this stuff. Well, finally, and this is something that it's a broad question, so it could be something that's small, it could be something that just happened today, or it could be something that is overall, hanging in your life. I'm curious, what inspires you to keep going every day?
What inspires me? It's also a great, man. You just have all the best questions, huh? What inspires me? Yeah, I think I'm still learning. I think I'm still learning. I'm still learning more about that about myself. If I'm being honest, I know one aspect of things that inspires me. It is the I'm an optimist, and so I love to envision what could be, right? Not about like what's here now, but I love to envision what could be, especially when I feel like the tools are out there and you just kind of have to innovate, right? Put things together to to create value, right? I Again, still learning about myself. Back when I was in college, I had this mechanical engineering internship. Don't like mechanical engineering one bit. I kind of have the mind for it, and it was pretty difficult. Plus, I also don't really enjoy like a lot of the mechanical engineering environments. I didn't think it was as creative as of a field or excuse me. Oh my gosh, we might have to cut some of this out. But I I didn't
Oh, it's
I
your
felt
personal
like
experience, man. That's fine.
yeah, I felt like mechanical engineering was going to be or demand like a lot more creativity from people and you'd have a lot more out of the box thinking. But it is pretty structured and so I like entrepreneurship much better. But I had this internship and I was working on a lot of projects for this PhD lead. I was his intern. We were essentially assisting in like the build of different parts of a NASA spacesuit, which was kind of cool conceptually. And my most fulfilling experience had basically nothing to do with that spacesuit. I automated a process. I shrunk the process down from 40 hours to 1 hour. And that was like the most fulfilling thing for me. And I was like, whoa, I need to, like, I did this mindlessly. I would do it for free over and over again. Like, I need to figure out
Yeah, you gotta put that as
what
a
this,
case study.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hey, it's on my resume, but yeah, yeah, for sure. I
NASA,
mean,
NASA as a case study.
yeah, I probably can't talk about some of this stuff though. But yeah, so there was that moment, and then just in reflecting on a lot of my like more fulfilling experiences, I think what inspires me is the possibility to create solutions, knowing that there are tools out there that haven't been put together to actually address that solution or address that a specific problem. So I know that about myself for sure, which is why I started this tech consultancy in the first place, because there are lots of these mini moments of like fulfillment and like knowing that, hey, like I have effectively helped somebody. But yeah, I think I'm still learning about myself.
That's a great answer, man. That's a great answer. Finding solutions that actually impact somebody. I love that. Well, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for, yapping for like 45 minutes. I mean, it's cool. I was able to learn some more stuff about you. And if there are people that are inspired to, keep in touch about your journey, follow up, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so yeah, you could email me, but they could check out my LinkedIn. I don't know, maybe we could add my LinkedIn into the comments, but I'm on LinkedIn, Abu Kamara, based in Philly. Also, my email is abu@gzsolutions.co. gcsolutions.co is also our website, so you could feel free to check us out.
Awesome. Well, this is wonderful, man. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thank you for having me.
Got it, man. All right. We'll see you.
All right, see you.